Hello all. Today we are going to see how to create a web server. For nowadays, with the modern day architecture, we mainly the web server is one which is the core part of the distributed application framework where it will handle a lot of requests from the client and it has a business logic to respond to each of the requests and give the appropriate response back to the clients. For today, we are going to see how we can create a web server in Node.js using Node.js in Visual Studio 2022. We are going to see from scratch how we can create a Node.js web server. It will be a simple web server. We'll start with a simple web server, how to create a basic one, and try to fire that up and try to see how it responds to different requests which is sent from the client side. For here, the client is basically I am trying to use a web browser as a client. Here, the web browser is acting as a client. So here, before starting up, you have to create a web application. If you want to create a web server, we have to create a web application type project. We have to take the template. If you want to see how it can be done, you should select this blank Node.js web application. It will be part of the Visual Studio 2022 template, project template. We can use this particular template to create that particular project. And once you create that particular project, lot of things will be coming along with those projects. Like package of JSON will be there, which includes all the necessary packages that this particular project needs to run it. And it has the main script file. This servers.ts is a startup script file. This is actually mentioned in one of the config part. For in the config, we can see the different compiler option, different exclude option also. The package.json, we can see what is the author, what are the scripts to run during the build. This is a command which is run when we try to build a particular project. When we try to clean the project, this is a command which it runs. And what are the dev dependencies to it, and what is the configuration, what are the different package dependencies, etc. It tells us. Therefore, here the main part is the server.js that I was talking about. It is the main script file. Therefore, it is mentioned here, the packages.json, as a main tag. It is given as server.js. Therefore, if we change this particular file to some other thing, it will that particular file be chosen as a startup file, just like our main .cs in C sharp. Therefore, here we can configure the main script file. Therefore, after configuring the main script file, we can actually try to, before writing the code, we have to install the necessary packages which it requires. Therefore, I am using the Express web app and the EJS local packages, Express package and EJS local packages I'm using. Therefore, before writing that particular logic, we have to actually install them using that npm package manager, node package manager, short for npm, and npm install express. We have to write this particular command in the developer PowerShell, which can be just invoked using this terminal. Whatever terminal, if you type in terminal here, click on this particular developer PowerShell opens up in the Visual Studio 2022 itself, and in the project path it opens up, and we can use this npm to install the necessary packages. I installed this express package beforehand, and I installed this EJS local packages beforehand. I will just go into detail what are these express packages about and what is the use of this EJS locals, etc. So after installing these two packages, and let's go to the code, means what we have to do to host a particular web server or run a particular web server. Therefore, here we will require certain packages. Therefore, whatever packages we require, we use this particular template require, and in the parameter we will give the package name, and we require this HTTP to create the web server to host a web server or create a web server, we need a HTTP. And Express is a web application actually. So this is a web server actually which actually hosts an application within it. For the web server is the one which actually receives request from the client side and it forwards to the web application. So that's how the framework is. For inside this web server, we have a web application, and currently I am using that Express application. It's a app web application created by this Express package I'm using it. For that I require this Express package, and for this view engine part for creating or rendering a view in the server side itself. For server side rendering of the views, I use the EJS engine, EJS local engineer I use. Therefore, I require that package and I imported those packages and store it in this local variable EJS. So I created a web application using this Express constructor, and gives it gives me a web application. And in this web application, I set the view engine as EJS engine. Whatever I imported that package instance, I set it as an EJS view engine for the master page, and I set the view engine as EJS. Whatever the engine I have set, and set the view engine as EJS identifier. And these are all the necessary route path or the paths which the client request, and these are all denotes the what are the uh, URL path for which this particular web server sends a response back or responds to this particular URL request. For the URL path will be that local host colon that port number hyphen till that it is the fixed, it is the base address. After that, the root URL is identified by this single slash, and once this particular URL localhost 3000 that port is and that particular URL is fired, request is fired, it hits this particular, this app gets this particular notification here, and this particular function, this particular callback function handles for the root path or the path without any, or the root path it handles. This is a callback function which handles for this particular thing, and it what it does, it actually sends a response back. What it sends, it actually uses the render API in the response to render a particular web page or render a particular web page back to the client, or it sends a particular web page back to the client, and it gives the what is the relative path of that particular web page. It is stored in EJS slash index. So if you see the project path in the view section, we have EJS and index.ejs. Therefore, this is the one that I was talking about, this EJS view engine. Therefore, it actually is a template, it's an HTML file which has certain placeholders in it. For example, this title is identified by a placeholder called title, which is actually embedded using this percentage hyphen symbol, and an H1 tag is also is a placeholder which will be replaced during the runtime. For this is what we are sending back to the client. So if you go back, you can see that the response we are trying to render this particular web page index ejs slash index dot ejs web page we are trying to render, and into that particular web page it takes only one parameter called title, and that title is identified by this particular text. Therefore, this is the parameter to this particular index.ejs. Therefore, title will be replaced by hello from node. So that's what this particular API does. Therefore, it actually accepts all the URL request for the base URL address, and it invokes this callback function for that particular URL request, And in this callback function, we are trying to send the response back to the client side. And similarly, for this particular URL, if you give the localhost colon the port number slash app slash user, if the client fires a request, this particular API will be hit and this particular callback function will be invoked as part of that. And in that callback function, what we are sending is we are sending a plain JSON back. We are sending a plain JSON back because we are setting the content type as application JSON and sending the pure JSON back to the client side. And at the end, we are actually passing that particular app to the web server, http.create server. We are passing that web application to it, web application instance to it. For as I talked previously, we need a web server which actually is acting as a host for a web application, and web application is the main part which we code or which actually has a business logic to send the response back. Web server is kind of a framework to it. For once we create a web server and we allow that particular server to listen to this particular port number, so that's how this particular script file is. Whatever server.ts is, when we try to fire this particular guy up, let's see how it functions. Therefore, if you go to the sorry if you go to the web page, we have to use this 3000 port number. Yeah, as you can see, once we fire the root URL address, only the local host colon the port number, whatever function is there, this will be hit. If you want to verify it, we can put a breakpoint also. If you just refresh it, so you can see this particular function got hit and this particular web page is getting rendered. Index.ejs is getting rendered, and if you put F5, you just allow it to continue, you can see that the title and h1 tag is the hello from node, whatever we have passed from here. And next thing, if you try to use this app user, and this particular callback function will be hit based on this particular URL, relative URL address, and we'll be sending a JSON back to the client side. As you can see, uh, the response that we have got is a plain JSON which was sent from the web web application. So this is a basic way of creating a web application or a web application in Node.js. So this is particularly a very basic way how you can create a web application with a view engine in place. I'm using the EGS view engine, and you can actually have a complex view in it. So currently, my view is pretty simple. It has a head and a single head and a single body, which has a title tag and H1 tag. It can be a complex. It can be a form also. So this can vary, and based on that, your server.ts logic will also vary, and based on the context, it will send the necessary response back. To render a web page, we use the render API to render a particular EJS web page back to the client side. So that's it I want to cover in this video. If you find this particular video useful, to share with your friends and do share your thoughts in the comment section below. And do subscribe and like this particular video, and see you in the next video. Thanks.